Hello, I'm Nicholas Lewis, Vice President of Global Marketing here at Hotwire Global Communications, and welcome to HotTakes, the Hotwire podcast. I'm here with Alexcia Lewis, Global Content Marketing Strategist, and we're delighted to have the opportunity to talk about the lead up to this year's AfroTech conference happening in Austin, Texas, November 13th through the 17th. Got a lot of stuff to talk about. AfroTech is one of the premier marketing conferences within the tech space, and I think, I want to use today's episode to really kind of get real and be honest about some of the issues that are facing specifically Blacks in the tech space. And then, also talk a little bit about, what leadership looks like, really authentic leadership through the lens of an African-American within tech. Alexcia, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I could have a little bit more energy, but that's just me on a daily basis, always wanting more energy, but I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation. This will be my fourth AfroTech event and my second as a working with Hotwire Global. And so I think I'm just really excited to attend and with the great team that we have going down to Austin and to just increase our insights more, to just be for the culture, in the culture. So I'm really excited.
Real quick, before we kind of get into some of the topics, for someone like myself, where this would be my first time actually attending AfroTech, what can I expect?
A whole lot of blickety blackness. That's what you can expect. You can expect a lot of, well, to put it into 2 words, Black excellence, which is something that is not amplified enough. Of course, a lot of attention has gone towards it in recent years, since the summer of 2020. But I think AfroTech, one of its goals and the reason why it was created in the first place was to say, we've always been here. And to continue to develop our skills and our knowledge, and again, to just amplify it within the majority. And that's why we have AfroTech. But we've always been in Silicon Valley. We've always been doing this. And so, yeah.
Curious. I have my perspective, and I certainly want to share it, but what does Black excellence mean to you?
Ooh, it means showing up and showing out. So yeah, we can show up, we can say we're gonna, wear our hair the way we want to, we can use the vernacular that is unique to our culture, but leveraging that to showcase that our culture is not just an alternative, that it is equally worthy of being celebrated. And that's across every different industry. Mm-hmm. We can see that in Black history in this country, mm-hmm. That those that have made an incredible mark have done it without compromising who they were.
Yeah. I remember a conversation that you and I were having the other day, and I made the statement that, I'm someone who sets the temperature. I don't necessarily adjust to it. And I think through the lens of Black excellence, right? I love what you said earlier when you said, we've always been here. And recognizing, embracing, and quite frankly, amplifying the intelligence, the swagger, the style, the nuances that we bring to the forefront, and really, understanding that we deserve everything that has for centuries been withheld, right? Through whatever roadblocks, through whatever obstacles that have been put in front of many of our ancestors, right? We as a people have continued to rise. We as a people have continued to thrive, and we as a people will continue to innovate and accelerate the dopeness from a culture perspective, of which many people are tapping into to yield a competitive advantage. But that may be a different conversation for a different podcast. But let's kind of get to it and talking about AfroTech. Certainly, as I said earlier, I'm really looking forward to attending because this is my first time since joining the Hotwire family and really entering into the space of tech, where I'm able to see other senior people who look like me, right? In a respective space, who I can network with, I can talk to, I can understand, what are some of the wins that they're having? How do they get to those respective wins?
Right.
I can actually understand some of the struggles that they may be happening, and some of those struggles may not necessarily be exclusive to tech. Some of them may be, right? And we'll talk a little bit about the language barrier a little bit later, right? And certainly the acceptance of colloquialisms, but again, we'll get to that a little bit later. But for me, kind of stepping into this and understanding that there is representation within the tech space, right? Albeit it might not necessarily be enough, right? But there is some. And really being able to kind of engage with others who I can tap into. I firmly believe that innovation is a beautiful thing, but imitation is a lot faster, right? And so understanding what's worked for them, how they've gotten to where they've been, how they've navigated various scenarios or situations, is comforting, right? For as a Black executive, right, who is relatively new in the tech, and trying to really get my footing correct. So I would appreciate just hearing from you in terms of for the first time goers like myself, what is your recommendation on how we experience AfroTech?
Ooh, that's really good. Well, I will say anytime I've gone to AfroTech, I've had the time of my life. I've For a person that has spent a lot of time in white spaces, trying to figure out not only who I was personally, but who I was professionally. And I think I know that AfroTech is about affirming that our path is different. That those of us trying to develop our careers, that are trying to understand their roles as an executive, as a leader, the path is different. So we need different tools and we need different resources. So I would encourage you to just come correct, be yourself, come with a learning mindset, come with a mindset that or come with knowing that you don't have to hide, but at the same time being on your P's and Q's, being on knowing who you are. Take some time to actually sit and be like, what do I bring to the table, and how can I align with people that have the same struggles as me, and those that have overcome those struggles, to your point. Because when you were talking about you want to just sit and learn and learn about those wins, those losses, and just, I mean, you and I have different, paths as far as you I was gonna say 20 years ahead of me, but what I
Yo, don't
mean.
be trying to call me old in a polite way.
I was like, oh, that sounded really shady. But you're still at another level where you're like, okay, this is where I'm at. But now that you're in a new role with a new company, you're still trying to navigate some things. So you're trying to learn how to align with people there. They're like, what do you do when you're starting over? When you've already built up this rapport in this sector, what does it look like here? Whereas people like me that are still technically young professionals, how can I position myself? What does the future look like? And what does the future look like for me being unapologetically Black? And I just feel like we need not only a space to learn, but a space to just feel safe, to just oh, okay, I can, I always say this, I can wear my knotless braid. can I still wear my Timberlands in my executive meeting? How did you build up a rapport with your staff to do that where you could still be yourself and you didn't have to hide? So, but yeah, just like back to the point, like bring your full self, know who you are, know what you're good at, don't overthink it. This is not a place to compete. We don't have to do no crabs in a barrel. This is a place for you to learn and to be celebrated in your community. So yeah.
Yeah. I really appreciate that point. I came across, I believe it was an article from one of the Forbes councils, right, where it was really talking about the challenges of specifically for Black men in corporate America, right? And this idea that Black men can never really fully show the full range of their emotions, but must always appear to be happy or collegial, right? Vis-a-vis, being angry and upset. And I don't know if that's exclusive to Black men, but again, the article was about it from a Black man perspective. And it's been, the point is really interesting to reflect on, particularly again, as a learning opportunity. Now, the reality of the situation is that I don't scratch my head if it don't itch, and I don't laugh if it ain't funny, right? So I'm gonna keep it 100 wherever I am.
Okay.
But there is some truth, right, to this element
Yeah.
of limited range, right? And I can't tell you the volume of times throughout my career where I've had to really tap into situational awareness and emotional intelligence, right? To really think about not only what I was saying, right, but how it was being delivered, right? And the elevation and the tonality associated with it, right? In ways that I don't think that, others really have to consider in such a way, right? And so, as a Black executive, and really, talking to someone who I believe has a phenomenal future, right? These are the challenges that we're faced with every day, right? Where,
Right.
facial posture on Zoom call
Right.
with a
Keep your
2-inch
smile on.
thumbnail, right,
Keep your
is
smile on.
is is
Yeah.
is being evaluated and ridiculed in a way that quite frankly is exhausting and ridiculous, right? But that's the
Right.
reality of the situation. And so, I'm really looking forward to being able to have those type of conversations and have that type of dialogue because, I think people kind of get uncomfortable for whatever reason when you are being authentic, you are showing a range of emotions around who you truly are. And, historically, as I've led or managed people, I don't like to say manage people because I lead people. I've really tried to establish the expectation that we're human and being a
That
human,
part.
right, has a mix of emotions. There are going to be times in which, you're pissed. There are going to be times in which you're pleased and when you're motivated and when you're passionate, and one should never mistake passion, right, for anger. Um, but frequently, people who look like me have historically been misdiagnosed, right, when they've merely been, demonstrating passion for being angered. And, again, that's a different conversation for a different day, one that I would love to kind
Is
of.
it? Is it a different
What
conversation for
what
another
what
day?
well let me tap into my Freddie Haynes vocabulary and
All right.
park here parenthetically. Maybe it's not. Love to hear kind of what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, like I mean, of course, I can never speak to the Black male experience, even though I've been around Black men my whole life. I love Black men, but as a Black woman, I can say there are some similarities as far as, having to be like to your point, having to be on Zoom meetings, like, and then a friend, a mutual friend of ours, she was just talking about our hair, like, you got to make sure you be presentable, that you're palatable, that you're easy to swallow in a sense. Like you're not like ruffling and making the majority feel uncomfortable. Historically, we as minorities in this country have had to make white people feel comfortable in order for us to do anything, to succeed, to just be present, to sit next to them. It came with the cost of make me feel comfortable, look as close to me as you can, act as close to me as you can, leave that ghetto at the door, the quote unquote ghetto, leave your um intimidation at the door. Like even though that's really just how we've been perceived, we've always been perceived as violent, as angry, as uneducated, as our culture being less than, because it doesn't have this Eurocentric black and white fitting within the lines type of thing. Like, so when we're like out here in the professional world, we're not just addressing like, you know we're not just talking about how we are from 9 to 5. We're addressing a bigger issue within our country, within our globe, about why are people so bothered by blackness? Why are people so bothered by seasoned culture, by our music, by the way we look, by the way we show up in this world? And so I like I said, I can never speak for the Black male experience, but I think even just working in white spaces, I've seen the way that, if a Black man just asserts his point, it's like, oh my gosh, what did you mean? It's like, he was just asserting his point, or she was just asserting her point as a Black woman. Why do you, I think we need to start talking about, why do you feel threatened, instead of me having to tone it down? Why does your you asserting yourself look like passion, and mine looks like violence? Mine
Yeah,
looks like an attitude.
yeah, yeah.
Mine looks like, can you just kind of stay in your place and make me feel comfortable? So when we're showing up as our full selves, we're addressing like, I'm not here to make you feel comfortable. I'm here to be me, the human being that I've been created to be, culture and all, melanin and all, shea butter and all, you know? So yeah,
Cocoa
like
butter
I'm
too.
gonna come out here moisturized on this Zoom call, like I don't even know why I said that, but yeah.
Hilarious, hilarious. I mean, I think, I think there's a certain element of professional maturity, right? That often is one-sided, right? And
Right.
one of the things that I've said for years, right, that I learned from my time at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, right, is that ideas are better when they compete. And as an ideator, you should never fall in love with an idea, because when you fall in love with an idea, you begin to personalize it when that idea comes under scrutiny. And you should, quite frankly, want your ideas to be challenged. You should want your ideas to be picked apart, because what's going to happen is, either one, it's going to reveal that there were actual gaps in that particular idea, or two, it's going to reveal that you're not articulating that idea in the most effective manner. But a lot of times, right, and I can say again, I've had to think about how I challenge on the premise of an idea. Never the person, never the person, but just purely the idea, right? And think about, again, not only what's being said, but how it's being said. And even sometimes when you say it in the most delicate, nice way, there's still an issue. And so
Like, how dare you?
how dare I
How dare
question
you?
the idea that was actually put in front of me? And so you have to sometimes ask the question, okay, is this really about the idea, or is this about the person who challenged the respective idea? Is this about the person's ethnicity who actually challenged the respective idea. And so I think, when bringing it back to AfroTech, right, and having the particular conversations, right, around, navigating particular spaces, right, having the conversations around the role of emotional intelligence, and let me extend emotional intelligence to more about professional maturity and situational, awareness. I'm really looking forward to hearing kind of the perspectives of others who have been able to navigate these particular scenarios and navigate it authentically, where they don't feel like they've had to compromise who they are to be successful in their respective careers.
I agree. And I'm just thinking about, like, to your point about asking for the proper compensation, asking to be paid um, for our work, and what those conversations look like. Whereas someone like that looks like me and someone that doesn't look like me, why it can be an issue to just raise your voice and say, I should be compensated for this because of XYZ and what I bring to the table, what I'm contributing now, and what I'm proactively, going for. And it's kind of like this hush child, like, oh, you should just be happy, which Black people have been told, you should just be happy we gave you a call. You should just be happy we offered you a seat. And so I think that's another thing that I know that in the Afrotech space that we talk about, that like amongst each other, like how are you doing this? And it's something that we're constantly raising the alarm about. Like, why is it such an issue for us to speak up for anything, for us to say this is what I deserve just as a human being, not even just because I'm Black, but because baseline, it's because I'm doing the work and I'm doing it well, and I'm excelling beyond expectations. And I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that, like, as someone that's been um in your career for a while. Again, I'm not trying to call you old. Uh like, how you've had to navigate that and saying, um, this like this is what I'm worth. And just kind of also saying, I'm hireable. That's something that you've talked about. Like, I'm hireable. Like,
Yep.
don't get it messed up.
Yep.
Like, I know who I am and I know what I can do for you. So what is the barrier that what is that barrier that makes you feel like you can't see that? And why do we constantly have to like try to push, like, hey, see my work?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think it's interesting point. We live in a transactional world, right? And I'll equate this to even when my wife and I were dating. She said to me, she said, well, you act like you the prize. And I said to her, I am, but you are too.
Ooh,
And
I wish I
so
could have been a fly for that conversation.
and so the parallel, the parallel to that point that is very aligned in terms of how we have to navigate professional spaces, right? Is that there are things in which companies or organizations present incredibly attractive value, right? Whether it's because of name recognition, whether it's because of perks, whether it's because of flexibility, whatever it may be, right? Particular, access to industries, whatever it may be. And then there are things in which that the individual has incredibly attractive value for, whether it's their respective expertise, whether it's their respective reputation, right? To either bring forward a new emerging service offering, bring forward new clients, bring forward new thinking, whatever it may be. And so that employee and that company have a transactional relationship, right? I'm offering you something, you are offering me something. And what happens, right? Because I hate the statement that, well, everyone's replaceable. No, everybody's not replaceable. If you're a Detroit Lions fan, Barry Sanders was not replaceable. Calvin Johnson, not replaceable. What's up, cuz? These are things that are not replaceable, right? Positions are refillable, but the equity or the impact or the relationships or whatever it may be, whatever that value proposition might have been, is not replaceable. And so when I think about one of the keynote topics as a part of AfroTech, right, in terms of letting your technologists thrive, right, keeping star performers engaged through upskilling and opportunities to create, what people have to realize is that as an organization, as a leader, as a manager, whatever your stilo might be, okay, and I did say stilo as the global VP of marketing, whatever that may be, right, you have a responsibility to create effective experiences that allow people who are under you, right, to feel as if they are being nurtured, to feel as if they are being developed, to feel as if they belong, to feel as if they are supported, right, and to feel as if, in another way, that you have their back. Okay. And as an employee, right, or a staff member, whatever your stilo may be, you have an opportunity, you have a responsibility, right, to bring it. Now, in my experience, in terms of the compensation aspect, right, I can tell you straight up, there have been situations and scenarios where, from a market recognition perspective, I knew I was being underpaid in terms of the impact that I was driving, in terms of the responsibilities and remit that I had, right? And so, how do you navigate those situations? Well, first and foremost, right, you need to understand what is your brand within the org. And remember, similar to any marketing structure, right, your brand image is not what you say, but it's the thoughts, feelings, and experiences that people around you have, right?
Right.
And so what is your understanding of your impact from a brand perspective? Now, if your impact from a brand perspective, right, is effective, right, then what do you understand the organization or your manager or your leader or whatever they may be, what do they value? And are the things that they value align with the strengths that your brand image presents, right? There might be times in which they do, and there might be times in which they don't. And when they don't, if you recognize that you're employable and that you're hireable, right, then life is too short to be at places where you're not appreciated, to be at places where you're not embraced, to be at places where you're having to fight tooth and nail.
And the church says, what?
Amen.
Amen.
For the things that you deserve to kind of come naturally to you. Okay. And the workforce is far too competitive right now to have to be engaging or dealing with that type of wasted energy. Because right now, all organizations are engaging in a talent war. Let me repeat that. All organizations are engaging in a talent war, right?
Basically, you don't need me. I mean, like, I don't need you, you need me. So let's.
Well, it's gotta go both ways, right?
True.
It's gotta go both ways, right? One, the organization has to create an environment that's desirable to want to stay. Two, the employee has to create a reason that's attractive for them to be maintained. That's what I mean when I say this is a transactional relationship, right? Because otherwise, it's a competitive space right now. And so we have to be careful that people aren't doing the basics and expecting more than that, right? I'm speaking to those who are grinding like bad bricks, doing their thing, and are not necessarily compensated effectively. I'm not speaking to those who are half beep, beeping their way and expecting the
Oh no,
world.
we're not talking about that.
Right. But just to keep it 100 right now, right? And so, in my scenarios or whatever, I've had to be very honest about the impact that I've driven. I've had receipts to be able to pull it, where there hasn't had to be a whole lot of nip and tuck, if you will. But that's not always the case. And you have to be confident and believe in yourself well enough to say that if that conversation doesn't go well, I'm prepared to move forward with the alternative. And so for some, that's not an easy decision.
I have no words because I feel like I just sat in front of the altar and you just like douse me in like oil. And all I can give you is a hallelujah.
The doors of the church are wide open.
The doors of the church are open. The seats have been laid out. Sit down. You want to join whatever ministry that you just gave an outline for. I did want to kind of segue a little bit, but kind of continue that because Black executives, Black leaders, people that are already there, people that are grinding, they are, just busting their tail to not only like amplify their company's work or their startups work or their own, if they, freelance, whatever. Do you think they are not being highlighted enough because we're a PR agency, right? Do you think they are not being highlighted enough in media publications beyond expected times? Those expected times, Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, when it's more, those times where it's like, oh, of course. But the work that they're doing and the journey that they are on, do you think that that is highlighted enough? No. And I'm not talking about Black publications like the Blavities, like the AfroTechs, the Essence, the Plug, all of those things. We're talking about those quote unquote coveted tier 1 publications, and that they're not the chief diversity officer. I got to throw that out there. So, yeah.
No, I don't. I don't think that they're highlighted enough.
Why?
And the interesting thing is because it really doesn't make a lot of sense right now. What we've seen over the past 2.5 years, right, is this focus on partnerships, this focus on DE&I, this focus on venture capitalist funding or additional funding. Even if you look at the media industry, so less about just tech, but just the media industry, Byron Allen has been suing so many different entities, right, because of a lack of large media spend with minority-owned, agencies or networks or whatever it may be, right? And so there's been some systemic resistance, right, to building on what was the perceived momentum that was being established over the past few years with the establishments, again, with all of this funding and partnerships and things of that nature. But it's almost kind of come in very small sprints, and there hasn't been anything sustained. And so why is that? Well, you have certain executives, right, that were making these decisions because they didn't necessarily want to be a part of the negative PR wave that was happening a few years ago. And so the interesting thing
about it. Let's talk about it.
The interesting thing about that is Matt Story, who is a prominent VP with Visa, he and I were Adweek executive mentees together. He and I were having a conversation on his podcast, and we said that if 2020 was the year of promises, 2021 was about the year of receipts. Ooh. And now I'm going to take that a step further and say that 2022 is the year of insufficient funds.
Ooh, I love analogy. I just love it.
Because the equity is not there.
Right.
And everything that you promised, everything that people were buying is now being declined, is being denied, right? Because there's been a substantial drop, right, in the highlighting or the energy that we saw post George Floyd. And so people have gotten comfortable and they've never really fundamentally changed. They just adapted for the situation that was in place at that particular point in time.
Correct. And I've said this before, and I think I had this with in our Amplify series in my conversation with Marcus Knight. Like, being Black is something that I just am. I've been Black since, the day I came into this world. I've had to deal with what that means to be a Black woman. And it's not just a DE&I goal for you. It's not just about getting you some clout or to just keep Black people or keep Black and brown people from not calling you out for not having enough people on your executive leadership teams or in your companies throughout. Like, this is my real life experience. And so what I'm seeing is that, and back to what I feel like AfroTech is trying to address, is that the companies are now having to be held accountable for the ways that they just try to use Black and brown people to gain clout. And AfroTech, well, first of all, AfroTech been doing this before we saw the murder of George Floyd and the world just apparently awakened to the fact that, racism was like a thing.
Everybody with Kanye West, but that's another conversation. Go ahead.
That's a whole nother conversation. But when the rest of the world, when the others caught up, AfroTech had already been doing that. AfroTech had already been a safe space, had been a place or a resource, even just the website and like the articles that they've written outside of just the event conference. They're doing this 365 days of the year where they are celebrating Blackness, saying, or talking about or having those tough conversations about what it means to just be Black in America, not just being Black in the tech space, but just what it means to be Black. And so, which is addressing, like, we're not just a DE&I goal for you. So that, I think at AfroTech conference and then their events throughout the years, that's something that's put on stage. It's like, we get you. It's hard to go to these companies every day. And they, you got people asking you, can you write something for Black History Month? You got, it's just, I don't even want to get into all of it.
Yeah. No, I think that organizations and I applaud everything that I've seen up until this point from AfroTech and other orgs, right? NABJ is another one who is very forthcoming and addressing inequities from a journalism perspective, particularly when there's a lack of representation in certain areas. And I think, as organizations are stating that they're going to become more diverse, and quite frankly, as clients who are holding agencies far more accountable for the lack thereof of diversity, right, within executive leadership structure.
I can tell you what session that I'm the most excited about for AfroTech 2022.
Talk to me.
Intuit is presenting a session called Building a Brand That Matters. And so I think as a content marketing strategist, I think this is a good session for me to sit in on. Michael Mitchell, the senior director at Intuit of Brand and Content Studios, is leading this. And basically, we're just going to talk about, I'm expecting we're going to talk about like how to make a measurable impact in our organizations through content marketing. So I'm really excited about that. Of course, I'm also excited to meet new people because I'm an extrovert, and even though I've been to these events and I've made a couple friends, you're gonna always meet more friends. It's probably an introvert's nightmare, by the way, but for people like me.
Well, there's two that really have kind of caught my eye. The first is really this idea of understanding energy management and burnout recovery. And I'll just share really, quickly a personal story that earlier this year, I had lost like 30 pounds in 2 months, just being totally burnt out. And I think that's certainly something that has been running rampant, right, since COVID ever, arrived, right? And we've had to kind of change the way that we've worked, and certainly that separation of home and work has become incredibly difficult, right? Because you're not necessarily leaving a physical space anymore, and so navigating that and really trying to find that same energy, that same passion, that same velocity, but also establishing the appropriate guardrails, was tough. If I'm gonna just keep it real, was very, very tough for me, particularly, when you're a high performer, but you're trying to establish those guardrails, and you have such massive responsibility. And so that's certainly something that I'm interested in, just really, hearing from, her name is Nova Nicole, who's a leadership development facilitator with Shopify, at AfroTech. And then the other session that I'm interested in is really the journey to executive. And, the opportunity to hear from really 3 prominent Black women, in Christina Jones, Kelly Buchanan Spillers, and then Krista Bourne from Verizon, Infor, and then Salesforce, just to really hear their stories and be able to understand, what are some things that I can extract from what their pathway has been. I'm a firm believer that, listen, innovation is a beautiful thing, but imitation is a lot faster, right? So those are the two that I'm looking forward to, and then also just networking and meeting a lot of different people, particularly in tech. So I know some of these parties are going down like 4 flat tires. If you see me, I'm a borrow a line from T.I. You didn't know me, so
It's the 4 flat tires for me. Like, how old are you?
don't judge me. So something aged gracefully.
A little black, it don't really crack, but you don't want to be whacked though. Okay, no, I'm just playing.
Thou shalt not be whack. But keep going.
Thou shalt not be. That is a top commandment.
Amen.
I'm just really excited for you to come, for you to experience what this community has to offer and how it energizes you to just keep going. It's like when you move away from home, you just out there battling for your life. And when you come home, you at mama's house, you at grandma's house, she cooking her collard greens, you hear Smokey Robinson, you hear like on the vinyl and everything, and it just feels like home, and it just re-energizes you to go back out there in the world and just continue to do what you're doing. And so I feel like that's what this conference offers in a more like holistic way. Like, yes, we're learning things. Yes, we are, recruiting, we're networking, we're doing all of those things, but it's a homecoming, in a sense, for those of us that have gone to HBCUs, those of us who have not, like myself, and we got Mr. Graham fam over here. But anyways, it's like a homecoming. And so I'm just really excited for our team to really engage and to just have a good time. I know it seems like I'm wild over here, but I'm just so excited to just go and be me.
Yeah. Well, listen, when you said it's similar like homecoming, my response to that is just say less.
Say less. Like, we got trap bingo. They have a trap bingo after party. Like, I've never even experienced that.
Yeah.
Going. All you have to do is say trap. So
there you go. I'm in there last swimwear. Cool. Any last thoughts?
I've left it all on the floor.
Left it all on.
From you?
No, I'm excited. I'm excited to experience it. I'm excited to talk about this afterwards as well, right? So, perhaps everyone can stay tuned to the next episode of Hot Takes, where we can talk about what we experienced and what we learned at AfroTech 2022.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for tuning in with us today. If you have more questions or would like more information about Hotwire, please visit us at hotwireglobal.com. We'll have new episodes soon, so please sign up on our website and we'll let you know when they're available.
Peace.